This is the Cedar Creek Church Living It Out podcast, a midweek reminder where we discuss key takeaways and principles from the weekend message to help you live out the truth that you matter.
Well, welcome to the Living It Out podcast, a weekly podcast to remind you that you matter and help you live out that throughout the week. Thanks so much for joining us, Cindy Casey. You're here today. Thanks for being here.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me, Ben.
We are going to talk about the weekend message a little bit, but before we do, let's get right into the icebreaker. And actually, what we are going to do today is go through the Living It Out discussion questions. So I don't know if you know this. I know you do, Cindy, but every week we write discussion questions that people can go to, and they can do these discussion questions with their family, or they can do it with their group, or their friends, whoever they want to. And it goes along with the weekend message. So we're going to dive into those. But the icebreaker of the discussion question is, what was your favorite home cooked meal as a kid?
Okay, so I remember as a kid, my mom would make homemade chicken noodle soup, and she would make her own noodles, and she made them really thick, sliced with the flour and the egg. However, I do believe that might be part of the reason why I have a gluten sensitivity now, because there was so much flour in these noodles, and they were so thick and so good. I mean, they were like chewy because they were so big, but that was really one of our favorites as a kid.
Yeah, that's something we share as a gluten intolerance. And this weekend, my daughter turned 7, so there were like cupcakes in the house. Like, we don't ever have gluten in the house, but like we ordered pizza that wasn't gluten-free. I didn't eat any of it. I guess but every time I walked in the kitchen, these cupcakes were like calling my name.
Gluten-free cupcakes are really good.
I did have some gluten-free cupcakes, and they were pretty good. But I would have to say my favorite was probably stuffed peppers. So and speaking of birthdays, we would always get a birthday meal. I don't know if your family did that, but my mom would always be like, "What do you want for your birthday meal?" And every year, stuffed peppers is what I would ask for.
Well, that was pretty healthy, though.
Yeah.
Better than my noodles.
Yeah, I have a twin sister. I don't remember what she would ask for, but I'm sure it was good too. But my oldest sister, up until probably 2 years ago, would still make me stuffed peppers on my birthday and bring it over. So if she's listening, I know you're busy, but I could.
When's your birthday, Ben?
No, I'm just kidding. So yeah, I love thinking about meals that I ate growing up and think about all that. And the reason we are talking about it is because Ben talked about where we get nourished, and we'll be talking about that here shortly. So before we do, though, the series we're in is Why Prayer? And one of the questions we've been, I think, discussing throughout, but we're going to talk about again today, is when do people most often pray or turn to God, or what turns us or drives us to pray?
Usually, it's an emergency when we know that there is something critical going on in our lives, or somebody is hurt or sick, going through a difficult time. That's when we turn to prayer. Right.
I know Ben talked about like being shocked, and he told a story about the skunk. And at first he was kind of like, "Oh, I can take care of this. I'll get the trap." He was kind of going through all the things to get rid of the skunk on his own. But as soon as it came to the moment where the skunk was like upon him, and he's like, "Oh, no. Like, dear God, get this thing away from me, save me, so I don't have to get sprayed and go on vacation and smell like a skunk." And I think it's that okay, when we know we're in it deeper than we can handle, a lot of times we're like, "Oh, I'm ready to pray." And we talk about this all the time. Pray first. It should be the first thing, not the last resort. But so often we do use it as a last resort. So yeah, I think that is what drives us, unfortunately. So that's why we're doing 28 days of prayer. It's why we have the Pray First bracelets, to continue to remind us, hey, this is the first thing, not the last thing. So Ben also talked about a passage in John 4:27 through 34. And I believe Josh Whitlow talked about this passage not too long ago about the Samaritan woman. And just about, she was at the well, she was a Samaritan, and Jesus approached her and talked to her and offered her living water she would never thirst again. And then she ended up leaving to go tell other people about it. But before she left, the disciples kind of came back, and they saw Jesus talking to this woman. Like, well, why are you talking to her? Like, they were shocked, Yeah. And then ultimately, after a while had passed, they're like, "Hey, aren't you hungry? Like, you've been here all day. We've been traveling. You've been talking to this woman. Like, don't you need some food? And
yeah, they even asked if he'd gotten food from someplace
yeah,
else.
yeah. Ben joked about like Chick-fil-A or McDonald's or something, but yeah, they're like, did you get food from somewhere else? So can you talk about like what his answer was for that?
Yeah, you know what? The nourishment that we get and the way that our soul has peace when we pray, even in difficult situations, that's when we know that the Spirit is working in us to give us that peace that only God can give us when we are going through those difficult times and when we are praying. I shared with you earlier how, when I was thinking about this a couple of weeks ago when we had that storm come through, I woke up at 2:00 in the morning and it sounded like a tornado outside. And my first thought was, I have to pray. And I actually got up out of bed and I didn't wake my husband. I went out and I kneeled down next to our couch and just started praying that God would protect our home, protect our community. And that just gave me such a peace. I feel like my soul was nourished because then I could go back to bed and actually lay there and pray and not feel like I had to look out and watch because there was nothing I could do other than pray.
Right.
And so just that nourishment that only God can give us when we totally rely on Him.
Yeah, and I think with Ben's talk too, he was trying to help us see how our prayers don't often only have to be safe prayers about being, having a good day, but they can be really prayers about receiving nourishment. And I think about that with my daughters. They just went back to school, kindergarten and first grade and fourth grade. And my prayers for them were just for them to have a good year, for them to have a safe year, for them to learn and to stay healthy and to know God more and all these things, but nowhere was it like, bring them trials in their day so that they can learn to lean on you, or so open their eyes to the opportunities they have to bless other people, even if it means sacrifice in their life, So I think that's what Ben really helped us this weekend see was like, Jesus's nourishment was coming from doing the will of God. And for us, are our prayers asking God to like, hey, what is your will for me to do today? And I think a big part of that is the Great Commission and sharing Jesus with those in our lives. But if we're only thinking about ourselves, if we're only, thinking about safe prayers and not really asking God to point us to the opportunities to share Him with others, then we're going to miss out, and we're not going to feel that fulfillment and nourishment that He offers.
My husband is really good about that. And he will pray that God brings someone into his life that he has an opportunity to share the gospel with. And so God, is so faithful about answering those prayers. When we ask that is part of God's will for us.
Right. Yeah.
And it does nourish our soul, when God bring somebody into our life and we can talk to them about God and what He's done for us.
It is fun talking to Jim about that. He has such an opportunity every day. He works with all different people. Yeah. And he has a chance to, find out where they are in their walk and their journey, and then just kind of pour into them a little bit. And it's nourishing for me to talk to him about the nourishment he's getting from doing, what God's called him to.
Me too. I love it when he comes home and he'll share with me, this is who God brought in today. And I had an opportunity to ask them where they were in their spiritual journey. So
good. So question 3 is, what steps can you take to create a prayer life that nourishes you? And I think we kind of covered that of just really, asking God to open our eyes, to pray the prayer, point me, to not just think about being safe and healthy and comfortable, but about, stepping out of our comfort zone to give the gospel message to other people. I think the second part of that question, number 3, is how might the prayer point me impact our lives? Can you just kind of play that out a little bit? Like when we start praying that prayer, how could it impact us?
Yeah. I know for me, and I'm sure it's true for you too, Ben, but when we ask God, just use me, just open doors for me to be able to be a representative of you. And we never know what that's going to look like. But just knowing that those are the prayers that God wants to hear from us, to put us in circumstances and situations that we are going to be able to be His hands and feet, or to be able to, just have an opportunity to talk about Him.
Yeah. And I think that's what's fun about, our church's mission statement about introducing people to Jesus and the life-changing adventure that he has for them is because we do see it as an adventure. Every day as we take a next step, we don't know where it's going to lead or what God's going to call us to or what opportunities there are going to be. And Ben talks about that quite a bit. He's like, when I first came to church and started rolling up the chords for the band, I had no idea where it was going to lead, leading to eventually leading our high school ministry to a campus to the church. And, the adventure we're on, it's exciting.
It is exciting.
It's when we say point me, it might be a small step at first, or like, hey, I want you to talk to this guy over here and tell him about Jesus. But, we never know where it might lead. And even if it's not something, like leading a church like, Ben is, but it's just having conversations with our neighbors and the people that we work with. And like, if it's pointing them to Jesus, then that's really what it's all about.
Exactly. You and I have both been around for a long time, Ben, and, just being a part of the church in the beginning, like you said about Ben rolling up those chords, but just seeing what God has done here. And I truly believe that Cedar Creek is the church that it is today because we are founded on prayer. Before Cedar Creek ever went public, being open for people to come in, there was a core group of people that prayed every week together for the future of Cedar Creek. And look at where we are now, 26 years later.
Right. Yeah, that is amazing. I know I came a little bit after you, and when I came, we were doing I think they were like third Fridays or something that. So we would get together, a small group of core people at the Holiday and French quarters and pray for the church and pray for the future of the church. And I think that's one thing that's pretty exciting right now is we do a prayer night every first night of the month.
Every first Monday of the month.
Yep. Every first Monday of the month. So you want to talk about that just for a little bit?
Oh, I would love to. When we first started the prayer nights, and it was right before COVID hit, of course. Everything was like right before COVID hit. Okay, but, to see that grow every single month and more people coming in, but just having time to pray. And even the groups of people that just walk through the building, praying, having opportunities to come together with a small group of people and, praying. And then they will give us prayer prompts like, okay, so we're going to ask that we pray for our local schools and just everything that they're going through, praying for the children, praying for our church, praying for Ben, and just having that opportunity every first Monday of the month to come together and pray and to have some time of, worship and singing also. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, for sure. So whatever campus you go to at your campus on the first Monday of every month, that's happening. And you can be a part of that for sure. So, as we think about what's coming up, I know next weekend, Ben Snyder is going to continue the Why Prayer series. And then that finishes the weekend of Labor Day weekend, which is a special weekend for Cedar Creek as well. So you want to talk a little bit about that, Cindy?
Oh, my goodness. We are so excited because as a leader of Dream Teams, we have all campuses coming here on Saturday, September 4th, all 6 campuses right here at Perrysburg. And then on Sunday, we will have 5 campuses here. Finley's going to go back home and have their Sunday services. But we are still able to have White House, South Toledo, West Toledo, Oregon, and Perrysburg here at this campus. And just celebrating, that's also the first weekend of the month, which means we're going to be celebrating baptisms, which we really get excited about. But just being here as one church is always so much fun. So I hope that we have a lot of people show up. We know it's a holiday weekend, but it's still going to be so much fun to have everybody here worshiping together and just celebrating.
Yeah, for sure. We're looking forward to that. Also, September, first weekend of September is the first weekend of Growth Track.
Oh, how can
so
I forget
Ben
that?
talked about this weekend too. It's actually, we're coming out with a brand new version or updated Growth Track. So we're calling it Growth Track 6.0. It's called Growth Track, but internally we're calling it Growth Track 6.0. And I'm really, as we talk about this message, as we talk about, asking God to point us, a big part of that is our purpose and our spiritual journey and knowing where we are on the journey and what our next step is. And And I love the way Ben talked about that too. He's like, once you take a step on the journey, like you're equipped to help someone else take a step as well. So I think Growth Track really helps you see all those things. You think about your purpose, your passions, your place, and just, I think those things all point to, hey, this is what your purpose is. So if you have not taken Growth Track, you can take it this weekend. Or not this weekend, the first weekend you can take it every weekend, but the first weekend of September is what I'm inviting you to.
Yes. Oh, and we are so excited because we do see that when people go through Growth Track and they understand a little bit more about their personality and the way that God has gifted them with certain gifts, they are so much more comfortable to step onto that dream team that they end up being passionate about and using the gifts that God gives them. And one of the things that we always say is that it's not just about us blessing others by using those gifts, but it really does bless us when we are able to give back what God has given us.
Yeah.
So
I mean, it points right back to the nourishment that we had talked about. So very cool. Thanks so much, Cindy, for spending some time and kind of talking through this weekend's message and Growth Track and Dream Team and prayer nights, and just appreciate you and spending the time. Also, for each one of you who took time out of your day to listen to this podcast, thanks so much. We hope that it serves as a weekend reminder and helps you live out the truth that you matter.